So firstly, just to say hi everybody, I'm Hilary. So I am the founder of the Brand Activators, an events management and speaker bureau, and I also run the Facebook group Step Up, Stand Out. So I'm all about helping entrepreneurs, authors, coaches, consultants, sports people, people that have done amazing things within their life and have a great story to tell. I'm all about helping them to find stages and platforms to share their story. So really simple. I've been in the marketing and events world for over 26 years, running all sorts of events from major conferences, international trade missions, children's events, celebrity parties, and everything in between. So I'm absolutely delighted that my mate Michael has agreed to do a session with us tonight. Michael and I have known each other for about 2 years. Stop pulling that face, Michael, as I'm describing our relationship.
It's great.
Yeah, we met working with Paul Lancaster on Newcastle Startup Week.
Yeah.
And we've just never looked back, have we?
No, I mean, I don't know what we're going to see when we look forward.
No, absolutely.
That's the interesting bit.
Absolutely. I just think you've always got some great ideas and forever testing me. So it just makes me need to scratch my head more every time I meet you. So Michael's a multi award winning entrepreneur. I will call you Michael, an entrepreneur. Started quite a number of advertising bureaus, agencies, built them up, sold them, got rid of them, started a few new brands, got into fashion design, created some fantastic products and niches through Always Wear Red. We worked recently together on a great project for Sage. Michael pulled together an angelfish collective of associates, and we worked together on the Sage project, which was great. It was really good, actually. Thoroughly enjoyed that. He's obviously worked with great brands, small brands, medium-sized brands. You're all about thinking very differently, being really creative in that, and I just thought there might be some great little bits and pieces that we can pick up and learn in these different times that we find ourselves in at the moment. So I know quite a few you have got marketing type backgrounds as well. So if we just do a quick round robin and just say who we all are, is that okay before we get going? So let's kick off with Tim.
Hey, so I'm Tim. I've been a marketer for donkeys, like 23 years, but most of my work now is with leadership groups around commercial storytelling and propositions and helping them design kind of new business models for existing business and stuff. So a bit more teachy, a bit more wordy, a bit more workshoppy than doing actual marketing.
Mm-hmm. I like it. It's nice to go on the other side, isn't it?
It is. It's good.
Yeah, I keep saying that about events, actually. Right, that's it. I'm going to stop doing events. I'm just going to do some teaching and coaching. But I always seem to get myself pulled right back in there for some reason. It's a bit of I think it's a bit of an addiction. So, Alan, over to you.
Yeah, I recently made a fantastic decision to go self-employed. I've got a real passion for photography and have had for many years. So it's a challenge, but it's an interesting one, and I'm quite enjoying it. I basically help businesses to put themselves forward through updated, personalized imagery rather than the stock type. There's nothing wrong with stock imagery, but for a business, you really need to be putting forward the right message, put forward people's faces, let people know who you are, where you are, what you do, and that's mainly what I help people to do. So yeah. Really enjoying that. And I'll put in an apology now, by the way, because just the way things have worked, my wife's about to deliver my dinner. So what I might do is just show you a photograph of me while I'm listening to Michael, but I will listen. So apologies for that if I disappear. But yes, that's me.
No problem. My dinner's following, but with a large glass of wine, so I'm going to hold off. What type of photography is it? Do you specialise in?
I specialise in property and people, mainly. That's what I specialize in, but to help people with their social media, websites, print, that kind of thing, that often involves other sorts of imagery. But I do love architecture and shooting people, pardon the expression. I don't do it with a gun, I do it with a cannon, as I always tell people, and I enjoy that. That's good fun. Yeah,
great stuff. Well, enjoy your tea. Phil. Hiya, Phil.
Hi there. Yeah, my name's Phil Strachan. My business is Strange Brew. And what I do is I help businesses to stand out from the crowd. And I do that because, quite frankly, too many don't. They're lost in a sea of sameness. They've jumped in the bandwagon. They're in danger of becoming the bland at time for God. So I help them to think brand, not bland. And what I do is I call on I'm only 28, by the way, but I call on my 45 years experience working with brands, 15 years client side, and 20 and 30 years on the other side, as was said a moment ago, I changed sides. So I've got quite a lot of experience working with big brands, working with global brands. But for the last 20 years, I've concentrated on working from home rather than up in London. I still deliver London quality, but nowadays at Glasgow prices, even though I'm based in Reading. So yeah, that's what I do. Thanks.
Cool. And I'm right in thinking that you've worked with Casper Craven, who's one of my speakers.
I could say I have, but then I'd need to kill you. Yeah. I've worked with 3 of your speakers, Hilary.
Oh, who else?
And I'd need to kill you. Yeah.
I won't tell if you won't tell.
We'll have a conversation. No, I worked with Penny Mallory.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And also, yes, and Sylvia Baldock as well.
Oh, goodness, yeah.
So there you go.
I know them very well. Yeah, God, small world. Well, that's good to hear. That's really good to hear. Brilliant. Okay, then, Michael.
So shall I just go then, shall I? So I'm going to put a little presentation on in just a moment, which will either work or it won't, because I don't know if I can do Zoom, but we'll see. Because there's just 5 or 6 of us, it's just a chat really. So clearly it's a linear presentation, which I'm going to go through, which will probably take 10 or 15 minutes, I would predict. I've scribbled a couple of things down just in case no one at all talks to me, which I can talk about, or you can just talk to me. I would imagine that this isn't really me transferring, let's say, knowledge and information this way. That's not all that this is about. I don't think, because it's a small group, we can have a bit of a discussion, and that's probably what the second half should turn into, I think. So I'm going to try and put this thing on now and see what happens. 1 second. What can you see on your screen?
You shared your screen.
I'm going to do a little thing now. Oh, here we go. Right. So can you see my desktop? Can you?
Yep.
Yeah.
The tree. So can you see a hello page? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So what I've done there, that's a summary of how this chat was built. Just make sure it's working. Yeah, it's working. So how this was built is what you can see there. Just move you lot around. Okay. Is there anything you want to, this is just dead relaxed. Is there anything you want to ask or say about what that says? Or is that kind of what you were expecting, or are you all going to go now? Okay, cool. So that's the kind of thing I'm just going to chat about. So deep recession, I've worked through a few of them, as you guys will have as well.
Yeah.
And the question is interesting for me when I looked at it and thought, well, how shall I create some content around this? The keywords are at the end: brand, PR, marketing, and sales. And I think a lot of people very flippantly, not flippantly actually, a little bit of a panic sets in when something big happens. Let's say it's a recession or a pandemic or a war, even, as it says. And we group those things together. We go, what should we do about brand, PR, marketing, and sales? And basically, I think one of the things I'm going to mention, I think the 2 major things are, one is they're all different, so you do different things to all of them, is the first thing to say. And secondly, and this clearly isn't stating a fact, it's just my opinion, but I'm going to tell you why it's my opinion as we talk. Within a year, we're going to be back to how we were anyway. So anything you do is a holding position, because it's not about looking for agreement necessarily. I'm just telling you my view of why I think we're going to go back pretty much to how we were. The short answer to why that's my opinion is because we always have, in 3 words, in anything that's ever happened, any deep recession, anything, you know, like Ebola or whatever that's affected countries, there are very few permanent scars which fundamentally affect how businesses operate. And consumers stay pretty much the same anyway. The interesting thing is for me as well, this chat that I'm doing was written 2 weeks ago, and I looked at it and things are moving pretty quickly. You know that just today there's a, was it like an emergency declared because the beach at Bournemouth was full of idiots? I mean, we just want to get, when I say we, I'm generalizing, but we want to get back to the pub. We just want things to go back to how they were. Anyway, let's flick through this. A little bit about me. So I was born in 1968. In 1990, I graduated as a furniture designer from University up here in Newcastle. 1991, I started a business. But what the business did was it made awards and promotional gifts, basically. I basically, with a friend of mine, set up a business that basically said to promotional gift buyers, stop buying 10,000 things for £1 and just throwing them out there. You know, I'm a furniture designer and my mate Keith is an architectural metal worker. We'll make you something far more beautiful and personal. Get your bloody database right and actually choose decision makers and target people with, instead of 10,000 things that cost £1, maybe a lot less that cost a lot more. And then we built a business, ran that for a couple of years. Then from 1993 through to 2000, I worked at universities and enterprise agencies. I worked at 4 universities and the 2 biggest enterprise agencies up here, helping people to start and grow businesses. Then from 2000 to 2014, I ran a creative agency called One Best Way. Then from 2006 to 2007, I developed a little technical development company, simply because our lead technical guy left and I said, look, I'll give you all the tech work if you take me on as a X% shareholder. And after a year, that didn't work out. So I sold my shares and then rebuilt a technical team in-house. Then I built a digital marketing company called Angelfish, which has shifted offering and shifted position a few times. That's still going now. Then I built a web support services company. That was, I described that as an accidental business because when you've run One Best Way for 8 years, you end up with a few hundred websites to host. So you may as well build a web support services company. So that happened alongside. Violet Bit was a very narrowly focused brand consultancy. I was very lucky to have in my team the former financial director of Nike when Nike employed less than 100 people. And also the former head of planning and strategy from Saatchi's came to join me for 6 years. And I learned so much from them. And now my true love is actually brand. So Tim, who listens to me waffling on online from time to time, thank you for that, Tim. You know, a lot of it comes from that period of my life, that 6 years, basically. Always Wear Red was me working out if I could build a business to consumer brand myself, or whether I was one of those bullshitty consultants who could talk about it and not actually do it. And I'm not sure yet because it's early days, you know. So we'll see, because Always Wear Red just, you know, costs money. It's got quite a following, but it doesn't make any money yet. But I find it very interesting. 50 Odd is a daily blog, because on my 50th birthday, which was nearly 2 years ago, I said to a friend of mine that I'm going to write a blog story a day for the next 10 years, just to see if I can write and to see if what I write is compelling enough for people to follow. So that's what I did. And then very recently, and this is interesting because a lot of people hit the pause button. This talk is meant to be about what happens during pandemics, and most people hit the pause button and start making decisions and wait for the storm to pass. And I don't think that that's what you should do. I think you should actually go the opposite and do, you know, work harder and do more, because there's a lot of uncertainty. So when things are kind of certain, if you do 3 things, you can kind of know what will happen with those 3 things. In times of uncertainty, I think, you know, if you do 3 things in times of certainty and 2 of them work, in times of uncertainty, in my little brain, if you do 6 things, 3 of them might work. So just do more things, make more time. And if you need more time, as I said I mean, this has nothing to do with you guys or anyone in the room, of course, but if you want another day in your week, as I was talking to someone about quite recently, I just said, well, get up 2 hours earlier, 4 days a week, and you've got another day. And so for me, you know, I just think it's not hard. I mean, if I was 22 and a lazy sod, because I was when I was 22, then I would probably go, nah, but I'm not now. I'm 52 and not a lazy sod. Anyway, those are the 4 things I'm doing now, as you can see on the screen. The amount of money, by the way, that these things generated at their peak, it wasn't huge. It was somewhere between $1 million and $2 million with about 30 people. So when you're doing that kind of thing, you know, a couple of million, well, $1.5 million actually coming in with 30 people, you end up with around about 6 figures a year. Now I'm doing these little things. When the wind blows in the right direction, there's only me in these little businesses, and it's about the same, strange, you know, because there are very little overhead. So as I say, with a bit of luck and hard work, the actual amount of money that I'm left with at the end of this is about the same. So I'm not a rich person. I'm not a poor person. I'm somewhere in the middle. There's a reminder of what we're supposed to be talking about. There are going to be 5 takeaways from this. I decided that I'll try and make 5 little things on the subject of what should we do in the areas of brand, PR, marketing, and sales during a time of unusualness, let's say. So I mentioned at the beginning, let's not group brand, PR, and marketing and sales. Because if we look at brand first, and I know I'm speaking to people in the room who are marketers and communicators, we know what brand is. And the only point I want to make on this is, if your brand truly is your DNA and what you stand for, and it's your purpose, and it's what you believe, and it's what you're most famous for, and it's the change you want to make, then it can't change. You can't change it during a pandemic or anything, because if it's an authentic belief and it's part of who you are, then it has to stay the same, or you just stop doing it and do something else. With regards to PR, and the way I define PR is this, I suppose: schedules and targets. You know, you're scheduling and targeting messages, identifying networks and channels that you should be part of. Just do more of this. Just reconnect, because I generally find that in times of busyness and in the day-to-day of normalness, we don't do enough of this. So go back to doing this. I think, you know, I mean, I was just scanning this because, as I say, I wrote it quickly two weeks ago before we chatted. And I think one of the headlines is just being disciplined, really. And interestingly, you know, because I can look into the eyes of the people in the room, a lot of the things I'm going to say in the next 15 minutes aren't actually to you, but it might be to the people who you connect with, if indeed you agree with anything that I say. So with brand, you can't change because it's what you believe in and it's what you do anyway. With PR, just do more of what you know that you should be doing anyway, because when we're busy, we don't connect and tell our story in the way that we should, I don't think. And then marketing and sales, I've grouped them together because I see marketing largely as insights, and then it's like a Venn diagram. It overlaps with actually the selling process. So marketing should inform the selling process, and you just flick backwards and forwards between the two. So the reason I've taken the time to split those 3 things up is because I didn't want to stand here or sit here and go, here's what we should do in the areas of brand, PR, marketing, and sales during a pandemic, because they're different. At one of the websites I have, it's the one business I have that actually makes a bit of money, is michael.co.uk. It is spelled as it's spelt in red there. I write essays, and the essays, by the way, it's just long form content. So one of the 3 that I've written so far, because I only launched Michael, I think a month and a half ago, maybe a month ago. Anyway, one of the essays I wrote, and by the way, an essay is 5 minutes of reading, slow reading, because 1,000 words is 5 minutes of steady reading. And that's what this essay is. And basically, as I say, I'm not sure this is relevant to the people in the room, but maybe to the people who you know. This is the serious business of serious business. And basically, one day I actually sat down with myself and said, look, are you actually taking your business seriously or not, Michael? Because that's me. And I said, if you are, then these are the things you bloody well should be doing. And I just battered them down into 1,000 words. And it's just a bollocking for anybody who runs a business, because it's the things that we're not doing in the day-to-day. And the reason I've dropped it into this presentation, if you like, is because we've got time to do our businesses as we know we should be doing at the moment. We've got time, probably. So, for example, and we don't need to go through, well, I will go through the detail of this. So a lot of people actually don't take a strategic approach to anything that they do in business. And a lot of people, I think, when they talk about strategy, and I used to do this, if I'm in a room talking with 3 or 4 people about strategy, I reckon we're all defining the word strategy in a slightly different way. So in my tiny little brain, I just looked at the 1, 2, 3 of, what is strategy? Set a goal, describe the change you want to make clearly, then describe the best things to do to achieve that goal, then describe how you'll achieve each of the things in the strategy to achieve that goal. And the reason I've written that is because I think a lot of people get paid a lot of money for documents that are not useful. They're waffly, they're just full of chat. So I just think if you skip between those 3 things, that's the fundamental of any strategy, I think. So in this time when, if we're all thinking, oh my goodness, the world's changed, what am I going to do? Sort your strategy out, either for marketing or PR or for brand. Because whilst your brand beliefs and approach shouldn't change, your strategy might. So the first thing I've mentioned there is don't crave normal, because people in your world and mine are wanting the world to go back to normal. I don't think we should be craving normal. We should be craving better, because there's no excuse. We've got time, unless we're perfect, of course, but I'm not. The reason I've mentioned social media and e-marketing and the strategic approach to creating content for them is because if we go on this journey to becoming better during however long this is going to take, where things aren't quite as they were, and by the way, I think that's a mixture of perception and reality. That might be another story. The second takeaway, I think, is just to storify the journey, because if you're going on this journey to make it better, just tell people what you're doing. I mean, Tim, we know the Do Lectures world, don't we?
Yeah.
Okay, so Mark Shaler, etc. So David Hyatt at the moment is doing a David Hyatt thing. David Hyatt, by the way, is one of the founders, well, actually the leading founder of the Do Lectures, and also the founder of Howie's clothing brand back in the day, and now Hyatt Denim, jeans company across in Wales. Anyway, he's basically saying, I'm going to tell you over 100 days, 100 ways that I'm going to make my jeans offer better. So he's doing those 2 things. He's not just sat on his arse, he's doing something, and he's going to tell you what he's doing. I like that. This is taken from, so basically what we're working towards now, guys, is stuff that we could be doing in the gap between where we were and where we're going to be. And by the way, I've already put my cards on the table. I actually would predict that where we're going to end up is where we used to be. So this is just a time to pause, and we're going to be 90% the same as we were then as we were back then. However, if we do what I'm suggesting, we'll come through it much stronger when a lot of people are sat on their hands. What this is a prediction from WGSN, which I can't remember what it stands for, but it's a research organization that I happen to like and respect. And they've basically said, this is probably what's going to happen. There's going to be a second peak somewhere. So that's basically what they've predicted is going to happen. Why have I put that on? Because I would suggest that this period of whatever you're calling it in your mind, if it's not quite normal, I don't think 2021, because COVID will still be around, I would think, is going to be, I'm planning for 2020 and 2021 to be kind of unusual. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen. A lot of the fundamentals are going to stay the same and come back. And I think 2022 is going to be when we're properly back to what we were before. And I want to be ready for that. I want to be a better me then than I was in 2019. But basically, the reason I'm showing you this is because this is, I think it's from the World Health Organization, actually, and the WGSN have interpreted it. Here's some stuff that might happen. There's going to be a second peak is the prediction. And, because we've all got we don't need telepathic powers. What happened today is probably going to lead towards a second peak of some kind. The reason I put this next slide on is because if we want to understand trends in our world, in our marketplace, we can get them. This is a way that my friend, a guy called Simon Cotton, who is the the CEO of Johnson's of Elgin up in Scotland, who we may know. They turn over 90 million quid and are the biggest knitter of cashmere products in the United Kingdom. He has to think about the whole shifting shape of seasons and who is buying what. So he's having a look at this kind of data, and he's preparing for a very uncertain, same as me actually, the rest of this year in 2021, but it's kind of a temporary change because we'll probably be back to what we were by 2022. The reason I put this on, it's not relevant to you or me, this, but there's some stuff out there, and get in touch with WGSN, plug into them because there's a lot of free stuff that they'll give you. This is on the subject of the third principle of the five takeaways. I've just written invest heavily in generosity. So if I go back to that slide, basically something I said on Twitter about 5 weeks ago, I said, look, I'm going to put 4 45-minute slots in my diary every Friday for an unspecified period. So and I put this on LinkedIn, and I said, if you want to talk to me, just send me an email and we'll talk for 45 minutes. And it was on the hour for a 4-hour block. So I had 15 minutes gap in between. And I basically said, and I can't even remember if it says it in this slide, I said, look, if you want to do this as well, just use the hashtag. So basically you've got this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday free day. Just do that. Just be generous. And a number of people did. And then I started to get people calling me going, can I use the hashtag? And I'm going, look, I don't want to do any work apart from the work I'm doing on a Friday. Yes, use the hashtag. You don't have to ask my permission. So I started to reframe it, and it took on a life of its own. And there were a number of people, not a huge number, maybe, well, it was certainly below 50. It was 30 to 50, I would suggest, who became the core gang who started to use this free day thing. And it was like a tiny little movement, probably just here in the Northeast, but there were some from further afield. But basically it was just, don't crave normal, crave better, storify the journey and invest heavily in generosity. And you soon work out who the buggers are, of course, who want to just take your time and not help other people. I basically said to everyone that I spoke to, you use the hashtag as well now and give some of your time away. So it became a little pyramid and a little, like quite viral, I suppose. I've just popped a couple of examples in because I'm working towards 5 takeaways here of companies that I like and respect who've done a thing that keeps them on brand. This is very important. There's a lot of people during the COVID period who are spending unbelievable amounts of money on just jumping on a silly bandwagon who are, I think I wrote a post on it quite recently about let's do an advert with piano music, show an empty street, use words like family and I can't remember the words now, and disconnected, and there's probably a set of 5 or 6 words that we should all be, unprecedented is very important, of course, let's do that. Or if you're a company like Painter Jackets, just say, look, in our next batch, we're going to give all profits to the NHS, and there's going to be there's only 175 of them, and they sold out within 59 seconds, I think. Or if you're Simon Cotton, produce a great product, he wasn't. I liked this that Simon did because I really liked the product. It's a lovely multicolored 100% cashmere scarf, which cost 200 quid, 50% of which went to the NHS. But the point is, he stuck to his brand. He didn't do something crap and not aligned to what Johnson's of Elgin have always done. So I really like what Simon did there. The reason I put Nike on there is because, and forgive me because you're all marketers, but you probably know the story, but I was lucky enough to hear it firsthand that during the recession of the 90s, and I had a guy called Roger Blight working with me. Roger Blight's the former FD of Nike, who was there when basically in the deep recession of the 90s, they went into the recession as the global number 3 with Adidas and Reebok in front of them, and they came out of the recession as a global number 1 simply because they kept spending and they just kept accelerating on their messaging when the other 2 didn't. This was posted recently by Mark Ritson, who you probably know, but Mark Ritson is kind of a self-styled sweary bloke who's also very, very, very high-level marketer, in my opinion. And basically, this is just a mapping of mainstream consumer feelings the difference between July 2018 and the most scary month of all in the pandemic so far, which is April 2020. And the point is this: the media are telling us one thing, the sentiments are entirely different. The reality is the consumer is almost exactly the same. They're just waiting to get to the other side. Another whole new thing is the baddies, in many ways, for a lot of stuff that goes on, are the media. The reality of the situation is what we're looking at here. Consumers are basically the same. So look for inspiration and to inspire, because when I look at what Simon was doing across at Johnson's of Elgin, and what the Hugh is the main guy across at Painter Jackets, what they were doing, I find that really quite nice. But look for inspiration and to inspire. Join them. The reason I've got statues on here is not because of what's happened in the last 2 weeks with statues, because when I put this talk together, people weren't tearing down statues then. But the reason I put this thing on about statues is simply to remind me about a little story I wrote on 50 Odd, which was about statues. And the point I was making was, of all the statues that are anywhere in the world, they're one person. Invariably, the statue is just one person. And the worst decision I think you can make at times like this is to stop making decisions. And I know this firsthand, because in the badness that was going on in 2008, I stopped making decisions for a good while, and that was a bad thing to do, because I was scared. You know, I was frightened of what to do, and I ran a business that went from about 1.25 million to about 750,000 within a week, and I had to work out what to do. So the 5 takeaways, if we distill them down to one word, is just improve yourself, tell the story of the improvement, be generous, be inspirational, and just lead. You know, lead from the front. Don't just do nothing and sit on your backside and wait. And as I said before, if you want more time to do it, just make more time, get up earlier, work harder, etc. I wrote down a few things. I'm going to stop in just a second, and we should probably open up all the bits and bobs. I'm going to stop share. I'm going to try and get rid of that now and stop sharing. Are we back? Are we back in the room?
Yep.
Like a hypnotist. Are we back in the room?
You're back in the room.
Okay, cool. So basically, that was a really fast run through the 5 things which I think business leaders, and if we're worried about how we communicate ourselves, those are the 5 things we should do. Improve what we're doing so we come through better business on the other side. Tell the story of how we're becoming better. Be generous. Help as many people as possible. Within a confined amount of time, I would suggest. You know, you've got to compartmentalize your time, or you'll end up just running around. Be inspirational. Be inspirational is an interesting one for me, because you have to have an audience, and you have to be noticed for doing something. I know I'm just restating the point. Be inspirational. And finally, you know, don't stop making decisions. Lead, because in tricky times we need leaders. So that's all I've got to say on the subject in the core little presentation thing. The last thing I'll say before I'll just shut up and you can talk to me or talk to each other is the 3 things I'm doing at the moment, the 4 things actually. Angelfish, the first thing that happened in the lockdown was I sat down with my other half, Lisa, inside Angelfish, which was quite a broadly focused brand consultancy. And we said, look, we've got an opportunity to change things now if you want. When did lockdown start, by the way? 8 weeks, 12 weeks? I don't know.
23rd of March.
May.
We're 12 weeks, 13 weeks.
12 weeks, okay. So basically, I'm just going to tell you this very short story. This is what's happened in my life in the last 12 weeks. So Angelfish has been around since 2006, I think, as it said on the thingy earlier. And I've worked inside Angelfish with my other half, Lisa, for that length of time. So we had a conversation in the first week of lockdown. Said, look, we've got the opportunity to change some things now if we want to. I heard a funny noise. And Lisa said, it wasn't quite like this, but I'll say this because it sounds dramatic. I said, what do you want to do with Angelfish? She says, I want you to leave. So I went, this is Lisa, my other half, who I live with. She said, I want you to leave. So I said, oh, okay. And I said, well, why? And basically, we kind of get on each other's nerves a bit in a word, in not completely, or else we wouldn't be together, I don't think. But I'm kind of demanding and quite horrible in work. And Lisa has a true love, which is actually e-commerce solutions. So she said, what I think we should do, this is where we ended up. She said, let's just bin Angelfish completely. You clear off and do what you do best, which is help people to build brand and then tell the, you help people to find and tell their story, which is basically moving between brand and marketing and design. What I do best, this is Lisa talking now, she says, is e-commerce solutions. And I do them in a very precise way. So basically, we killed Angelfish. We're relaunching it next week as a completely new brand, totally focused on a very precise kind of online store creation. I've got this thing called Michael, which launched about 2 or 3 weeks ago, which is a very narrowly focused brand strategy offer. Always Wear Red is going to relaunch on the 1st of September with a new range of jumpers, scarves and cardigans. And 50 Odd is being reprofiled by me so that it can become a book. So I've spent 2 years, because it's my birthday on the 26th of July. And after 2 years, I thought I'll work out what this is. Can I write? Do people read it? So a few thousand people read it. I can write, I think, and it's a bit scattergun though. So I want to turn it into something else that could be published as a book with a precise audience in mind. So I'm just telling you this because in the last 12 weeks, somehow we've done this, killed a business. The Michael brand has been born, and Angelfish will relaunch as a completely different offer with a very narrowly focused brand position. So basically, I'm just telling you that I'm doing all that stuff in that presentation. It's not just talk. I've kind of done it, I don't know if it's going to turn out well, but I've done something. And that's it. So what do you want to talk about? Out and out.
Anybody got any questions? Hi, George. Who else has joined? Marvin. Hi, how are you doing?
Good, thanks.
Did you catch
Hello,
what
George.
I said?
Hello, Michael. How are you doing?
I'm all right. You're around, George. Last time I was out with you.
Well, I've been out a few times, but you haven't showed up.
I know, actually.
So,
There's people listening now. I'm pretending that you're the baddie, but I'm the baddie because you have invited me out 2 or 3 times and I've not been. But I've still got the scars from the time I did go out with you.
Now I'm trying to get Alan to go, but he's chickened out a few times.
I'm not. Despite having a now empty pint glass, I'm not really a drinker, unfortunately. It doesn't like me, so I never keep up with you, George.
You can just watch.
Actually, you can. It's a great night out.
But by every 3rd round, is that what you're saying?
No, I just said you can watch.
Oh, that's very good of you then. Yes.
4th of July, George. Then we can get back out.
I know, but I don't think Kuchi is not going to be open 4th of July.
I'll not bother then. I'll stop in.
I think what I always pick up from Michael is that he'll finish his bit by almost giving the impression that, well, it works or it doesn't. But I love the way that he obviously takes things very seriously and he does things seriously. You've mentioned it in your presentation as well. But I think you prove yourself by what you do and what you achieve. And that's action speaking louder than words to a large extent. But I do like the sort of blasé finish that you might add to the end of a discussion like this.
I think something I've written, when I write the blogs, Alan, I wrote something the other day, and it was basically, I remember it word for word. I basically wrote, brand is very important, but it's not nearly as important. It's not nearly as important as people like me say it is. I'll say that again. Brand is really important, but it's not nearly as important as people like me say it is. And what I actually mean by that is, of course, I get excited about my core subject, but it doesn't actually, you need a whole lot of luck. You need timing, you need good marketing, good design. And you need the resilience to get past the things that don't work. And the reason that one of the reasons I'm comfortable writing that is because I was very lucky to work with the head of international marketing, Professor something or other across at the university. One of the universities, it was Newcastle University quite recently. I worked with her for 6 months. Her and her international marketers helped me on a project with Always Wear Red. And I said to her one day, I said, this marketing lark, you know, because she's a professor and she's got all these funny letters after her name. I said, you know, sometimes marketing to me just feels like you put as many bloody fishing rods in the river as you can, and just wait and see what happens. Not just randomly, you know, they're good, they're considered fishing rods, and you've considered where you're fishing, and then do you just do that and wait for people to buy it? And she went, yeah, that's pretty much it. And she wasn't being flippant. And this is, you know, someone far more experienced than me. I'm not saying she's right or I'm right, but I thought, sometimes you've just got to keep moving forward. You've got to do stuff. Because the only other thing, I wrote 3 other things down, which I'll tell you before we go. 3 things which, because this is the theme of this chat is what we should do in this unusual time. The other 3 things I wrote down, which I just scribbled down before I came on. The first one was just stop moaning. Because people are just moaning. They're thinking about things they can't do more than things they can do, or things they haven't got rather than things that they have got. And it's a shame, because that's not the nature of entrepreneurial people. It's the other. You'll find a way, or you'll find an excuse, is something I wrote quite recently, I suppose. So I just wanted to mention that. Just keep moving forward. And going back to Alan's point, not everything's going to work. So you've got to go through, and I suppose it's a do lectures thing. To get to great, you've got to go through good.
Yeah. Good. And you've got to test.
Yeah. But I think the opportunity that COVID has thrown up is there's no excuse for not getting things done. It's sorting out the talkers from the doers. It really is. And the moaners from the positive people. Just get on with it. You know, I know it sounds a bit, but keep moving forward and get on with it was the first of the other 3 things I wrote down.
You know, Michael, I've got a name for the people who moan. I call them the BMWs. They bitch, moan, and whinge.
Okay.
That's part of life.
Yeah.
There will always be those people.
You know what? I mean, I think this is not me sat here stating facts. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm talking about from who I am, what I've done, things that have worked, things that haven't worked, things that I've seen other people do that I think are amazing. You know, there's a lot of people out there. Who was I speaking to recently? Oh yeah, I remember who it was. I won't disclose, but lovely guy who said, I feel really embarrassed to be around, you know, people, you know, I will say, people like you, Mike, and when I go to, you know, except who've done really well, I said, the first thing is, you know, it's, you do Always Wear Red and things like that. I said, the first thing to say is, I don't know what the hell I was doing in Always Wear Red for 2 years. It's cost me 100,000 quid to get where I am. I've had 60-odd thousand quid come in. So I'm 30-odd grand down. I've got to spend another 5-ish thousand to get towards the launch on the 1st of September. So it's a shocking business model. I said, arguably, if you wanted to have a real go at me, I've just bought a business. It's cost me 35 grand to buy a business. It's made fuck all. And the reason I mentioned that was because, and by the end of the conversation, I said, are you happy now because you know that I'm crap? And he said, no, not quite, but I feel a bit better. But the point is, I make money in the Michael business, 50 odd, and I have the opportunity to monetize, I think, in 2022. I have the opportunity to monetize and hopefully break even with Always Wear Red, but have a robust brand. So you know the way businesses make money, equity and revenue. So the revenue side of Always Wear Red is rubbish, but the equity value could be quite good in 2022. Michael is the opposite. That's the opportunity to make revenue of, I think, around 100,000 a year with a bit of luck for about 3 days work a week, 2 to 3 days work a week. But the actual value of the Michael business will be nothing. So it's getting the mix right. So I'm just moving forward, you know, and hopefully making enough money in one of the 3 things I do. And hopefully Lisa can build up the new angelfish.
All you're doing is having different sources of revenue, which is important.
Yeah, and having a bit of a giggle along the way. Yeah. I still feel a bit restless, but I have to be disciplined. Which the 3 things I wrote down about 3 more things in this unusual time. The first one was stop moaning. Second one was compartmentalize your time, because I have a tendency to drift, and lots of people that I really admire and respect have said similar things. I was with the MD of one of the biggest digital agencies in the Northeast at the moment, and he's working from home, and he says, I drift a little bit. I have to compartmentalize my time properly and then be disciplined enough to do that. Then the other things as part of this second point is definitely turn your phone off, definitely turn your email off, and just look at your email for half an hour to an hour in the morning, half an hour to an hour in the evening. It makes a massive difference. And I've also written on this second point, if you're like me, you're one of these guys or gals that drags all the flipping learning and things to read into a folder and never go into that bloody folder. And I've had enough of that. So I've got a learning day, the equivalent of 1 learning day per week for the next 4 weeks. So I'm just going to top my brain up with stuff, because I'm so lucky to be around such good people who teach me things. But I've got not loads, but maybe a dozen half-an-hour recorded webinars, but I'm not going to know what's in them by bloody osmosis. I've got to watch them. So, but I want to reward myself with that by, I'll tell you what I've done. I've shifted. If I work hard and compartmentalize my work for client work in Michael, I can reward myself with learning. I like that about me at the moment, because the older version of me would fanny about and then reward myself by looking at Facebook, which is just rubbish. So I've uninstalled Facebook from everything, because it just annoys me, because it's full of rubbish. It annoys me because I look at it. I'm not annoyed with the stuff on it. I'm annoyed with me for looking at the stuff on it. So I don't look at it. And just for what it's worth, the 3 things I wrote down, because the subject we're on is things to do in these unusual times. First one was stop moaning. These are all messages to me, aren't they, basically? Stop moaning. The second one is compartmentalize your time really well. And the third one was, and this is really important actually, and I would recommend, if you've not done this, that you do this. And I wrote down, create a mini tribe of you plus 6 people. And what I mean by that is, I have done this, and you can either do it directly or indirectly. And I'm quite specific about how you should do it. If any of you 100,000 people who are listening to this, 6 of us.
Wishful thinking.
I know, but maybe you've got a room full there, George. Maybe,
I've got the natives behind.
Brilliant, fantastic. What I was going to say is this: create a mini tribe, and this is what your tribe should consist of. It should consist of you, 2 people who you can help, and 4 people who can help you. Because surrounding yourself with people who are better than you, who you can learn from every time you speak to them, is so important in a time like this. And you'll be able to help them as well, which will make you feel really good. Because I always feel really good when I can help people who are better than me. And I feel really good if I can help people who are not as good as me either. I'm not being judgmental here, but in the same way as I do, that you're surrounded by people who are not as good as you, and some people who are flipping heck, they're good. But I'm lucky, David Hyatt is in my world, and he's better than me in probably everything, you know what I mean? And I learn from these people all the time, but I've surrounded myself with 6 people. Now, I've done it in an indirect way. The indirect way is there are a handful of people I interact with on a weekly basis, and like a little sponge, I soak things up. And there are a couple of people who I interact with because I know that they can do with my help on the journey. That's my tribe. Yeah. And I wanted to say that I do it indirectly, but there's nothing wrong with you. It could be Alan, it could be anyone. Alan could basically, if he wants to, go, I'm going to email 5 mates now, 6 mates now, and say, basically, once a week, we're going to chat and we're going to go, are you all right? I'm a photographer, you're a designer, you're a thisser, you're a thater. How can we help each other out? And you're just boxed into this compartmentalized, and they go, Alan, why have you got us here on this bloody Zoom thing? And he'll go, look, we're a little tribe of people. Once a week, we've got the time. We're going to help each other out. What do you mean we're going to help each other out? And then go, I don't know, but here's a way I can help you. And then I want you to help me. And I'll tell you who I said this to, actually, who I'm going to say it to, Tim. Because, Tim, do you know Katie Elliott?
Only by name. I don't know her, Noah.
All right. So Katie Elliott has done a couple of, she's talked once at the Do Lectures and twice at the breakthrough thing that the Do Lectures people do. Okay. And Katie's a friend of mine. By some quirk, she asked me to help her and me to counsel her. She's actually a leadership counselor type person. Anyway, this is where this kind of strange little idea came from. It's not a big idea, just a little idea. Katie is 5 weeks away from a 25-seater virtual Do Lecture thingy that she's doing. And it's 250 quid per seat. So that's £6,000 and a bit. And one weekend she's sold 6 tickets. No, she hasn't. 8 tickets. So there's 16, 17, 18 to go. And basically I said to her, because Katie's lovely and brilliant, but she doesn't ask for help. So I said to her, I sent her a text and said, let's fill this thing. She says, what do you mean? I said, I want to speak to you on Friday at 11 o'clock. We're going to develop a mini 4-week strategy to fucking fill this thing, because she needs the money and she's my mate. So I've forced her to ask me for help. And I'm now going to force her on Friday to ask as many people as possible, probably another 4 or 5 people are going to get a closed group. This is my plan. She might tell me to bugger off. But I'm basically saying, Katie, you're brilliant. So it's not like we're saying, please come and hear this lady do a talk. She's going to get paid. So is David Hyatt across at the Do Lectures, because of the way it works with the money bit. And everyone that goes there is going to benefit from being there. So I don't think we can lose. But the point is, jumping on people and helping them is part of what I think we should all be doing at the moment. I want to aggressively make sure that we fill this talk for her, just cause. And that's a mini tribe. Because the thing is, if we ask people, they're going to say yes, because they know she's great, but she won't ask. So I've got to be on her shoulder going, I'll ask them then, Katie. Oh, I know she'll say, oh, don't ask them, they're busy. Oh, yeah, they are, but you'd help them, wouldn't you? Oh, yeah, I'd help them. Well, what's wrong with asking them to help us then? I'll calm down in a minute.
Somebody, don't we?
You remind me of the Geordie expression, shy Ben's getting out.
Yeah.
Well, all right, then I was just saying it a bit nicer in that we all need somebody. But it's true. We shouldn't do things on our own, because, well, you don't really achieve in the same way at all, do you? So
No,
why not be better?
I think there's a balance to be struck. I mean, by the way, I can talk about this, but I'm rubbish at asking for help as well. I'm absolutely awful, by the way. So I'm a complete hypocrite on this subject.
I think it's because you fear people might say no. That's what's stopping. We don't like to hear the word no. And if we ask, they know our secret, and then they'd say no.
Yeah.
The thing is maybe that the idea that we've got, or whatever it is we're trying to pursue, we maybe don't entirely believe in it. Maybe it just doesn't have quite the resonance it should yet.
It's a very complex issue. I mean, particularly you, because your photography is great. How are you, by the way, Alan? How's your health?
Oh, good. Yeah, very good.
Good.
I've had 1 or 2 things just sort of checked out recently, and they're superb, really, really good results. So
good.
Yeah, thanks for asking, though. Yeah, doing very well indeed.
Good. Well,
when are you off to Scotland, Alan?
As soon as possible, George. My lads are sitting in my beloved Glencoe, and I can't get there yet. So the 2 lads moved on the 23rd of February, and we were going to go and see them on the 30th of March. And of course, we haven't seen them since they went on 23rd of Feb. So, yeah.
This uninvited guest has got a lot to answer for.
No, it has indeed. But you look at that bigger picture and you think, the numbers of people who've been affected, the number of people who've died with the virus, you just think, anything else really is so what?
It's a bonus.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned earlier, Michael, you used the word restless, and I just wondered in what context that was, if that was something that there was maybe something sitting behind it, that there's something that you want to do that maybe you haven't yet, or maybe
endless, and that's a problem, really. I think as well, I'm frightened. I get frightened of the things I'm doing. So if I self-sabotage, I was talking to someone about it this morning, you know, always wear red is going to come up to it's not a big thing, you know, always wear red is my thing and I love it. And I'm about to launch some things. If I've got to have conversations with myself, right? I can become restless and want to answer your question. I can become restless and start a new thing because I'm frightened of not selling as much as I should do, or, you know, but in September through till Christmas. So I can break it if I want. And then I can go, well, you know, I didn't sell stuff because I didn't order the labels in time, or something, or one of the knitters, I don't know. So I'll tell you what's happened, and it's only very recently on this subject of restlessness. I'm channeling my restlessness into the things I'm doing, not into new things, to remind myself. I'll tell you that just because it's very quick. The problem I had with Always Wear Red was worrying about selling things, but actually, and I don't want this to sound flippant, maybe it's just something I'm saying to myself, it's not really about selling things. Always Wear Red is a way of buying clothing. It's changing the way people buy clothes. So strangely, I scribbled down the other day when I was chatting to someone, almost like, you know, I'm not here. If you want to buy this stuff, here's the whole story of it. And I've tested myself over 4 years to be able to do something as amazing as this. And by the way, this is how I define amazing. This is how I define amazing, blah, blah, blah. But I then wrote down, if you don't buy anything, buy into the way I want you to buy clothing. So I'm not measuring it, Alan, just by people buying clothing. I'm measuring it by the change I can make with how they buy clothing. Yeah. Because I get, you know, part of the brand is saying 1/3 of all clothing never reaches a consumer. 3/4 of all clothing gets burnt or buried within 3 years. These kind of statistics are weird. 80% of all clothing that's bought by the people in this room never gets worn. Hillary's terrible for that. She's got wardrobes full of stuff that she buys and just doesn't wear.
Your secret's out now, Hillary.
Actually, George, how many hats have you got, George?
Not enough.
Yeah, good answer.
Has anybody got anything they'd like to ask Michael before we finish the session? Is there anything else you'd like to ask?
Just one thing, Michael, you remember talking now about the way you want people to buy clothing. You did an article on LinkedIn a few weeks ago about Primark. They've abandoned, they canceled their orders, and it loathed you to write about it, but the workers in Bangladesh who were starving, and if you paid a certain amount, they will be fed for the week. How did you square that circle?
Well, just to complete that story, because you've told it virtually exactly as it is, basically 2.1 billion pounds worth of clothing is now sat in mountains in Bangladesh, because when COVID hit, people like Primark said, and Matalan said, I don't want it anymore. So they just didn't want it. So basically you can pay 35 quid for 3 or 4 pieces of clothing. I've not bought any of the clothing. First of all, because I don't want the clothing, I have to say. But secondly, it just feels weird, George, because I don't know. I'm not going to change the world of clothing. I don't like the way that Matalan and Primark are kind of double bad for me, because they were bad before they did what they did and left the clothing, because I've not done anything. I've not done anything, George. I just wrote about it to raise awareness and said to people like you and other people, just do what you think. But I've not bought any of the clothes because I don't know what to do. It's not quite right. It just feels weird. It's like a mini industry has happened in the gap that the naughtiness of these brands has created, and it just feels really weird. So I've put my head in the sand a little bit. I don't really know what to do. I'm just cracking on with what I'm doing. I don't know what to do. I haven't squared the circle, have I?
No.
Don't know.
But you made people aware of it, that there's this humongous waste lying around, but also by the selfish action of those two and many other brands, people were left starving.
Yeah. But interestingly, it's going to go back to how it was before. I mean, the talk earlier, sorry, Hilary, I'll stop in just a second. they would like, there's a little bit, a tiny little bit of research, George, on sentiment analysis and how consumers are feeling at the height of COVID, and they're pretty much the same as they were before. Sadly, you know, there was lots of talk of people are going to come through this as much more purpose driven, but they're not, you know. But people like me in my little corner of the world, I can't change the world of clothing, but I can change my world of clothing, because I'm creating clothing which I want people to wear, share and repair, because I've got links with a company that will repair it for pennies in London for as long as you've got the clothing. And we've got a gender neutral, everything's gender neutral because we've mapped it so women and men can share it. Mm-hmm. I'll stop talking now. If anybody wants to talk to me at any stage, just get in touch directly. And, you know, thank you for, if you go to 50odd.co.uk, you can always get me through there. But if there's ever anything I can do to help, or you want to talk about anything, just give me a shout. And thank you, Hilary, for the opportunity to rabbit on this evening.
Michael, thank you so much. You gave such great content there. I've written loads and loads of notes, and you're bang on so many points. I'm just sitting there internally, just like squealing for all the things that I've been doing, and sort of thinking I'm busy, but actually I haven't been that productive. Been doing a bit of time wasting, spent far too long on social media. So that was quite a good wake-up call, to be honest. And it's easy to start a brand. The trick is to keep it going and keep developing it without stopping and going off in another direction, which I've been terrible for in the past. So
if you want to scare yourself properly, go to that essay, The Serious Business of Serious Business, and have a look at that, because it was just me ranting at me about what I wasn't doing. See how you feel.
Definitely. Well, listen, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And we'll be in touch again soon.
Yep, stay well.
Take care.
Yes.
Farewell.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Hilary. Cheers.